A man, just trying to protect his daughter. A woman, quietly carrying the weight of the past. And a child, searching for answers without knowing the questions. Sometimes, all it takes is opening the wrong door to rewrite everything. If you love simple but deeply moving stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe, because our next story might just be yours. Daniel Weber adjusted the strap of his pale blue backpack on his shoulder and took a deep breath. He held a crumpled piece of paper with his child's name and a class number on it, but the handwriting was so rushed he couldn't tell if it said 1C or 2G. He glanced at his phone screen. The calendar alert had gone off a few minutes ago. He was late. Again. Late dropping off his daughter at school. Late for work. Late for most things, really. But maybe today wouldn't be so bad. He just needed to walk in, nod for a few minutes, say yes, of course, to whatever the teacher said, and leave. One meeting, a few sentences, then stop by the store on the way home. That was the plan. But sometimes plans just hang on the wall. When he stepped into the school hallway, the smell of bleach hit him. Sunlight poured over the freshly cleaned floor, and somewhere in the distance kids were laughing. He paused for a moment. He showed the paper to the woman at the front desk. She glanced at it quickly and without looking up said, "Last door on the left." Daniel nodded and headed down the hall. His eyes caught the colorful drawings on the wall: stick figures, huge suns, crooked houses. Each one was a reflection of the kids' inner worlds. And that world now felt both familiar and very far away. He peeked inside the door that was slightly open. The room was quiet. The adults' chairs were almost full. Trying to make himself invisible, he sat toward the back. His shoulders were still tense, his mind still on the eggs he needed to pick up at the store. Then, he heard that voice. "Is it really you?" The voice was low, almost a whisper. But its echo inside him was so strong Daniel startled. He looked up and their eyes met. The woman's face. At first, she seemed like a stranger, but then a dusty box of memories opened. A summer evening, the smell of grass, shooting stars in the sky, and a yellow dress. Daniel's heart jumped to his throat. The woman standing before him after all these years in silence was Nina. But her last name was different now. Her posture was different, her hair darker and neatly tied back. But those eyes. He hadn't forgotten those eyes. Nina continued her introduction speech as the class representative, avoiding looking at Daniel. Every word hung in the air for him. We ask for parents' support. Volunteers for the playground. Trips. All those sentences fell over him like dust settling on a feeling he thought he'd left behind. 10 years. 10 years with no messages, no signs, no explanations. And now here she was, like opening a random page in the middle of a novel. When the meeting ended, the room emptied, chairs scraping as parents chatted quietly about their kids. Daniel couldn't move. His body was still, but a storm was raging inside. Finally, he gathered himself and walked over to Nina. She was putting a folder into her bag and looked up. Time stopped for a moment. "I wasn't sure," Nina said, "if it was really you. But now, seeing you." Daniel smiled lightly. "You haven't changed much either," he said. "But your new last name caught my attention." With a sigh and a small smile, she said, "Whitaker now. I'm Max's mom." Her eyes studied Daniel with a faint unease. "Which one's your daughter?" "Emma. 7 years old. First grade." Daniel ran his hand through his hair, embarrassed. "I think I went to the wrong class." Nina bowed her head. "Max is in 3rd grade. This is his class. So maybe this meeting wasn't a coincidence." Just then a little boy ran in. "Mom, come on, you promised hot chocolate." The boy glanced briefly at Daniel. It was such a familiar, touching look that Daniel's breath caught. There was something in those eyes, the same crease, the same perspective. A piece of himself. Nina gently touched the boy's shoulder. "This is an old friend, Daniel, and this is my son, Max." Daniel bent down. "Nice to meet you, Max." The boy nodded slightly and snuggled next to his mom. After a brief hesitation, Nina pulled out a note from her bag and handed it to Daniel. "Maybe we need to talk." There was a phone number written on the paper in a familiar handwriting. As Daniel looked at it, Max and Nina walked away. Even when their footsteps faded down the hallway, something inside Daniel kept moving forward. The story was just beginning. Daniel sat in his old car. The ignition key was still in his pocket. He wanted to start the engine, but his hand just wouldn't move. His eyes were still fixed on the small piece of paper he held. Nina's handwriting was familiar, maybe a bit rounder, a little shakier, but still with the same character. That paper wasn't just a phone number. It carried the weight of unanswered questions from 10 years. He wanted to ask why. Why didn't you say anything? Why were you gone when I woke up that morning? When he got home, Emma was already in her pajamas. The cartoon was on TV. Her eyes were glued to the screen, but her mind was elsewhere. Daniel stroked her head and sat beside her. The little girl immediately leaned against him. "How was the meeting, Dad?" she asked. Daniel swallowed. "Complicated," he said, "but I met someone who loves you very much." "Do I know her?" Emma asked. Daniel shook his head. "Not yet, but maybe you will." That night, after putting Emma to bed, Daniel went to the kitchen. He poured himself a cup of coffee but didn't drink it. He stared at his phone screen for a long time. He hadn't saved the number in his contacts. It was still on that little note. His fingers hovered over the screen. Should he call? It was late. But then he remembered Max's eyes. Those eyes held more than just Nina's legacy. There was something else. Something from his own youth. A look, a stance, a question. Finally, he pressed call. 1 ring. 2. 3. Then that familiar voice. "Hello." Nina's voice was tired but kind, like she had been waiting. "It's me, Daniel," he said, trying to hide the shakiness in his voice. "I know," Nina said. There was a brief silence. Time seemed frozen like the phone signal. "We need to talk," Daniel said. "Not just about the past. About Max, too." Nina took a deep breath. "Are you free tomorrow morning?" she asked. "We can meet at a cafe. Quiet, in a corner. The name doesn't matter. But that's where I always try to get myself together." "Okay," Daniel said. "I'll be there." The next morning was cloudy. Daniel arrived at the cafe 10 minutes early. When he reached into his pocket, he noticed the note was still there. Worn from folding, almost fading. He ordered a black coffee. He hadn't had coffee out in a long time. The table he sat at was by the window. Outside, people passed by, some hurried, some walking as if time moved slowly. Each living their own story, but in Daniel's head, one scene kept replaying. Nina saying, "Is it really you?" Nina arrived 5 minutes late. She wore a black coat, a gray scarf, and had dark circles under her eyes. But at the same time, she looked strong, like a cracked stone hiding so much inside. "Hi," she said as she sat. "Hi." They had trouble looking at each other. The napkin holder, sugar bowl, glasses on the table, all excuses for a brief distraction. Then Daniel spoke. "When did you find out Max was my son?" Nina lowered her head. "When I found out I was pregnant, I was going to talk to you." "Really? But then I got scared. You were unemployed. I was unsure. My family was pressuring me. I ran away." "And didn't say a word to me?" Daniel's voice rose a little, but it held disappointment, not anger. "I thought I was protecting you," Nina said. "But maybe I was just protecting myself." Daniel nodded. "And now, years later, I was supposed to learn this at a parent meeting?" "No," Nina said. "I didn't plan that. But when we met, seeing you and Max, I couldn't hide it anymore." Silence. The cafe buzzed softly, but the air between them was sharp as a knife. "Max," Daniel said. "My son." I'm saying it out loud for the first time. But inside, something like I'm already connected to that kid. When our eyes met, I felt something. Tears filled Nina's eyes. "Me too. But what do we do now?" Daniel gripped the coffee cup handle. "What do we do? I'll be a father to my son, even if late. But whether I can do it with you, I don't know." Nina slowly reached out her hand. "I don't know either, but I want to try. I want to complete something missing for him after all these years." Daniel took her hand. It was soft but firm with determination. The first step of a new path. A wind blew outside. The cafe windows trembled, but the bridge they built inside didn't shake. Daniel woke up the next morning feeling like something had changed. The sky was still gray, but inside him, a part that had been still for a long time started to move. While he went to the kitchen to make his coffee, he listened to the soft murmurs coming from Emma's room. His daughter's presence had been the only real thing keeping his world standing for a long time. But now, this morning, there was one more truth. He knew he had a son, and there was no excuse left not to see him. Nina sent a message that morning. "Max wants to go to the park today. You're welcome to come too. Bring your daughter as well. Just, we're something comfortable. For him, for you." Daniel's fingers read that message over and over. There wasn't a single word shouting out, but in every line, a lifetime of hesitation and courage clashed. Finally, he replied, "We're coming." The park was busier than he expected, but the sounds of children and birds helped ease the tension. Emma ran with her scooter toward the playground. Daniel kept his hands in the pockets of his black jacket and scanned the area. Soon, his eyes found Nina. She was sitting on a bench, her face thoughtful but peaceful. Next to her, a boy was crouched on the grass, lining up stones and leaves with his small hands. Max. When Nina heard Daniel's footsteps, she looked up, nodded slightly, then made room beside her. When Daniel sat down, Max lifted his head and met Daniel's eyes. At that moment, time froze. Neither the boy ran away nor the man stepped back. Words became unnecessary as they looked at each other. "You're Emma's dad, right?" Max asked. Daniel cleared his throat. "Yes, and I want to get to know you, Max." The boy looked down, fiddling with the stones in his hands. "Emma is sweet, but sometimes she talks too much," he said. Daniel smiled. "You're right. Her energy is endless." Max looked up again. "I want to build something with you, but my mom is always busy. I tried to build a tower at home, but it fell down quickly." Daniel swallowed. There was so much meaning packed into that simple sentence. "If you want, we can build something together," he said. "A good tower, or a castle, maybe a secret box." Max's eyes lit up. "Really? Really?" At that moment, Emma ran over. "Max, there's a swing on that tree. Do you want to come?" Max didn't take his eyes off Daniel as he turned to Emma. "Okay," he said, then looked back at Daniel. "Can you come too?" Daniel felt a tremor inside. That question was a child's sentence, but its meaning was huge. "Will you be in my life?" "Of course I'll come," Daniel said with a smile. That afternoon, the three of them sat under the swing, making up imaginary scenarios. They swung as if on a pirate ship. Max was the captain. Emma was the explorer drawing the map. Daniel was the old sailor hiding the treasure. Nina watched from a little distance. There was fear and peace in her eyes. This scene wasn't what she had dreamed of, but it was much more real than any dream. On the way back, as Daniel and Nina walked a bit ahead of the kids, he stopped and took out a small figure made of stones that Max had dropped on the ground. "He dropped this," Daniel said. "Did you notice how he always looks at you for a long time before speaking? It's like he measures you with his eyes. Is it worth it or not?" Nina nodded. "Even with me, it's like that. It takes time to earn his trust. But if he trusts you, he never hides what's inside. If he gives me a chance to be a father," Daniel said, his voice slightly shaky. Nina stopped. "Max loves you. Even if he doesn't fully understand it yet, he feels it. You could be this someone he imagines, but you have to tell him." Daniel squared his shoulders. "I'm ready. But about that question," Max asked. "Will we build something together?" "I don't think it was just a tower. It was something totally different." Nina looked him in the eye without turning away. "Yes, that was an offer about your life. Don't refuse it." Daniel smiled. "I won't." Just then Max and Emma came back laughing. Max showed Daniel a mud-covered stone he held out. "This is the foundation stone for our castle," he said. "It needs to hold tight." Daniel took the stone, gripping it firmly in his hand. "It will hold," he said, "for years to come." And in that moment, he truly felt like a father for the first time. It was a rainy day, the kind of rain that's quiet but persistent, seeping everywhere, telling a story without words. As soon as Daniel woke up, he walked to the window. The raindrops sliding down the glass echoed the growing anxiety inside him. Today was the day. Nina was going to tell Max the truth. The plan had been made together a few days ago, firm but gentle, honest but slow. After dropping Emma off at school, Daniel went straight to Nina's house. The wet leaves in the yard and the wind fluttering the jackets hanging outside hinted at the quietness inside. When he knocked, Nina's face looked unusually pale. "Are you ready?" Daniel asked. "I'm not," Nina answered honestly. "But I can't run anymore." Max was building a space station with Legos spread out on the living room floor. He looked up and saw them. "Are we going on a treasure hunt today?" he asked eagerly. Nina kneeled down to his level. "Today we have a different kind of adventure," she said. Max furrowed his brow. The kid's instinct smelled the change coming. He fell silent. The three of them sat on the couch together. Max swung his legs quietly for a while. Then he looked at Daniel's hand. "I liked building the castle with you," he said. Daniel's throat tightened. "Me too," he managed to say. Nina took a deep breath. "Max, there's something I've been meaning to tell you for a long time. It's not easy, but you need to know now." Max's eyes suddenly grew serious. Small but sharp, measuring eyes. "Is it something bad?" he asked. "No," Daniel said. Just something big. Nina fought back tears. Daniel, he's your dad. Max lifted his head. His lips parted, but no sound came out. For a few seconds, he just stared. His eyes shifted first to Nina, then to Daniel. What do you mean? Years ago, your mom and I knew each other. We loved each other very much. But something happened. We separated. And I didn't know you existed. Until I saw you. Max fixed his eyes on Daniel. You understood when you saw me? Daniel nodded. Yes, your eyes. They reminded me of something. Then I talked with your mom. I learned the truth. Max stood up. He kicked over the Legos on the floor. A few pieces flew. So, you were always here but weren't? And now you just show up. Became a dad all of a sudden. Nina got up and wanted to approach him, but Max pulled back. Why didn't you say anything? He shouted. There was always something missing. I was drawing someone in my head, but didn't know the name. And you said nothing. Daniel stood. Max, I'm not here to prove I love you. I already do. If I had known sooner, I'd have been in your life without a second thought. Max shook his head, trying to hold back tears. Knowing someone late is really hard. I know, Daniel said. But I'm here now. I'm not going anywhere. If you want, we can start again together. Max went quiet. Then he whispered, Will you really stay? Daniel stepped closer. Remember the castle we built? I won't tear it down. I'll build on it whatever's needed. As Nina wiped her eyes, Max came over to Daniel. His small hands trembled. Suddenly, he hugged him. Tight. Quiet. Daniel's eyes welled up. He could feel the child's heartbeat. It didn't replace the lost years. But it was a beginning. Dad, Max said aloud for the first time. That word shattered Daniel inside and rebuilt him. The heaviest but most beautiful word he'd ever heard. The weight on his shoulders hadn't lessened, but now it was shared. Max pulled back. But it won't be easy. Daniel nodded. Things that come easy aren't the most meaningful anyway. That evening, Daniel stood by the window while Max drew in his room. Nina came close. Today went much better than I thought. Without turning, Daniel said, I'm afraid of losing him. You already gained a piece of him. The rest is time, Nina said. Daniel looked at Nina. So where are we in this story? Nina thought. We're at an unwritten part. But it's not blank. Not erased. Clean. Real. Daniel said. Then we start writing. Together. For him. For all of us. And outside, the rain that hadn't stopped all day seemed to wash them inside too. The weight of the past was still there, but now 2 people carried it. 3. Maybe 4. Because sometimes, one word can change a world. The next day was sunny, but inside Daniel, the storm was still raging. Max's first dad was still ringing in his ears. The weight, the tenderness, and the responsibility of that moment had started to be carried together. But now came another challenge, telling Emma the truth. When he entered the kitchen, Emma was drinking her milk at the table and packing her bag. Despite the early hour, her energy was high. We have art class today, she said excitedly. We're going to draw aliens. Will Max come to our class too, Dad? Daniel hesitated for a moment. Max isn't in your class, sweetie. But there's something important we need to talk about him. Emma raised her eyebrows. Is something bad wrong? Daniel sat beside her, kneeled down to her eye level. No, but it's important. Max isn't just your playmate. He's your brother. Silence. A drop of milk fell onto the table. Without looking away from Daniel, Emma whispered, What do you mean? I mean, Max is my son. You share the same dad. But he has a different mom. I learned about him very late. Emma lowered her head, her hands on her knees. But why are you telling me now? Daniel's voice trembled. Because I just found out too. And I was waiting for the right time. But you're a strong girl. And Max needs your support. Emma didn't speak for a moment. Then she looked up. Then I'll treat him like a brother. But he doesn't have to call me sister. Daniel smiled, eyes full of emotion. That's a very mature decision. Max will never forget that. That weekend, Nina invited the kids to spend time together. Max was a little shy at first, but the alien socks Emma brought and the sibling team badge she made with her own hands quickly melted the ice. The blanket fort they built in the yard stood for hours. While Emma baked cookies inside, Max named the recipe Scientific Cocoa. And everything looked so normal that Daniel and Nina stood at the back door, trying to understand the reality of the moment. Those kids bonded faster than us, Nina said. Because they're starting from today, not the past, Daniel replied. Nina nodded. So what about us? Which day do we start from? Daniel answered without looking away. Maybe from tomorrow, but I'll be waiting for you every day. Nina smiled, but left it unanswered. She just gently placed her hand on Daniel's arm. For now, that was enough. The next day, Max came home from school with upsetting news. His partner in the science project had said, "Kids without dads don't get it." Nina's voice trembled as she told the story. He didn't fight back, but kept it inside. He got quiet. The teacher noticed immediately. They called me. Without hesitation, Daniel grabbed his jacket. Where is he now? In his room, flipping through books. But he's not talking. Daniel knocked on Max's door. Can I come in? No, yes, came from inside. But the door wasn't locked. Daniel entered. Max was lying on his back on the bed, holding a sketchbook. Daniel sat down beside him quietly. You heard it, he said. Max didn't turn his head. It doesn't matter. It does, Daniel said. Because sometimes words leave marks in ways even we don't notice. But there are also words that can change those marks. Max stared at his sketchbook. I've always felt incomplete, but now I feel a little more whole. It's just, some people still think I'm missing something. Daniel took a deep breath. You're not missing anything. Never were. You just found the pieces that complete you late. But now we're here. Max looked at Daniel. Will you really always be here? Daniel leaned down and put his hand on the boy's shoulder. Think of it like lighting a fire between our hearts. Once it's lit, it doesn't go out easily. Max looked straight at him. I'm going to ask you something, but you don't have to answer. Ask, Daniel said. Will you and Mom be a family again? That question caught Daniel off guard. But at that moment he realized. It wasn't just a kid's question, it was a call of hope. Time will tell, he said slowly. But whatever happens, I will never stop being your dad. Max nodded. Then he got up and handed Daniel his sketchbook. Inside was a drawing, a house for 4 people, a table, cookies on it. Underneath, it said, family sometimes comes when you least expect it, but when it does, it stays. Daniel looked without turning away. I'm framing this. That night, lying in bed at his own home, Daniel got a message from Nina. Max wrote in his notebook today, my dad is the best engineer. I cried. Daniel replied with just one word, we're still building. And that night, for the first time, he thought not about the past, but about the future. Spring was finally starting to show itself. The wind had softened, and the trees were beginning to turn green. Daniel sat on Nina's porch, sipping tea and listening to the children's laughter coming from the garden. Max and Emma were building a space house out of cardboard together. Tape, scissors, pencil cases scattered all over the yard. Occasionally, shouts like, Captain Max, there's a leak in this corner, or Emma, why is the sky door pink, would rise up, quickly turning into giggles. Nina sat at the other end of the porch with a blanket on her lap. She held a book, but her eyes weren't on the pages, they were watching Daniel. The distance between them was no longer measured by words. Every silence was like a breath following the sentences they had built together. Everything was quieter now, simpler, more real. Daniel put his cup on the table. Imagine this, he said. A few months ago, my life was just night shifts, school bags, and grocery lists. Now I have a castle plan. With 2 kids. Nina smiled. And a story unfinished. That story isn't unfinished anymore, Daniel said. It just got a new title. There was a short silence. Nina spoke without looking up. The other day, Max asked, is Daniel going to live with us? I couldn't answer. Daniel took a deep breath. Because I wasn't quite sure myself. But now I know. Their eyes met. Daniel slowly reached out his hand. I want to build a home with you, Nina. A house we build with conversations for walls and children's laughter for a roof. Nina reached out and took his hand. Do you think the kids are ready? Daniel pointed with his eyes to the garden view. Max was covering Emma with a blanket, trying to secure a thermos to a cardboard box, calling it the spaceship's fuel tank. I think they're ready before we are, he said. That weekend, a small table was set up in the garden. 4-4. The tablecloth fluttered lightly in the breeze, and lemon slices floated in a glass pitcher at the center. Cookies, fruit, some cheese, a simple but heartfelt meal. Emma put her hands on the table and spoke seriously. Max and I made a decision, she said. Max nodded. We approve. Daniel and Nina looked at each other. What do you approve? Nina asked. Emma said seriously, we want Dad to live with us. Max added, but with some rules. Daniel raised his eyebrows. Rules? Max held up fingers and counted. Friday movie nights. One camping night a month, whether in a tent or under a blanket. No arguing, just talking. Desserts shared equally. And we keep building the home together. Daniel smiled and raised his hands. I accept all the rules. Nina joined hands. Me too. And in that moment, the family built around that small table was completed not by a signature, but by a smile, a laugh, an agreement. Months passed. The living room now had Max's study corner and Emma's drawing board. Evening noises from the kitchen were no longer just forks and knives, they were the sounds of stories. The question, "What did you learn at school today?" got different answers now. They had learned to ask, "How did you feel today?" One day, Max came home from school excitedly and handed Daniel a paper. "Composition homework," he said. Topic, "The person who changed my life." Daniel opened the paper. The title read, "Not from space, but from my heart." A dad, his eyes filled with tears. He didn't even read the rest. The title was enough. Max was no longer just his son, he was the author of his story. Final scene, night. The kids were asleep. The house was quiet. Daniel and Nina sat on the porch, tired but peaceful. "Did you ever imagine a life like this?" Nina asked. Daniel nodded. "No, I couldn't have done better." Nina rested her head on his shoulder. "How do you think it will go from here?" Daniel looked up at the sky. "With mistakes, with laughter, with castles falling, but every time, with them being rebuilt. Like life." And that night, in that little house, only one lamp was lit. But inside, there was a home, a family, a future.